post this on
For sure.
YouTube as well, so people can catch up on it after. So the basic structure, we were just gonna start off with a few questions for you guys, Sasha and Rachel, and then just open it up for anybody to ask questions. So,
Sure.
Sounds good.
So for you guys who haven't met Sasha and Rachel yet, they run the Grateful Gypsies blog. They've taught English from almost all over the world, many years in China, and then lived in Indonesia and are now in Mexico. So quite a bit of experience living abroad and teaching English as well. So we thought a great place to start would be for you guys to give a bit more of your backstory and how you ended up going to China to start teaching English.
Yeah, I guess I should take that to start, right? Because I was the trailblazer. I was the pioneer. So basically, when I graduated it was May 2008. Yeah, anybody who's aware knows that the economy was pretty bad then, and there weren't a lot of opportunities really. And I got a degree in digital media, which maybe not be the best degree for getting a job, but I did everything that you're supposed to do, internships and independent studies, and got myself out there. I was on the radio at school, did our student TV show. You'd think I could have nailed like a entry-level job, but even that wasn't coming. So pretty much was faced with the choice of move home with my parents until I figure something out, or do whatever will allow me to not do that. And I guess one day I was at an internship that I was working at, and looking at Facebook, I saw a friend's photos from the Great Wall and the Forbidden City. And I thought, how is Mark in Beijing? Like, what is he doing there? That's so cool. And so I messaged him and got the scoop on teaching English. And he was actually already in a program, my buddy. So he's kind of able to contact me, with the people who are running it and get set up and go over a few months later. And I just kind of took the chance. I figured the Olympics were going on in Beijing. So at the very least, I was going to check out the Olympics. I was going to see the Great Wall, the Forbidden City, the Summer Palace, all this cool stuff. And if it sucked, I would come home. As it turns out, I really liked it. I stayed through my first year, went back to the States, and then picked up Rachel to bring her back for my second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth years there. So, and I guess she was kind of a similar situation, really just like not a good situation for finding jobs and for a lack of a better option, really, and wanting to travel,
When he came back from Beijing, I was like, okay, because I have a music business degree and I'm from Tennessee. So I was like, let's just move to Nashville. It's like
clearly
a logical next step, right? So we had some friends that lived in Murfreesboro, which is maybe like a 30-minute drive south of Nashville. They were all still in university there. And they were like, yeah, you can come stay with us while you try to find something. So we went there and stayed with them and just couldn't find anything. I did the whole job search, paid to go to networking events, did a bunch of volunteering.
She bought a pantsuit.
I did. I bought a pantsuit. I walked around Music Row and passed out my resume to a bunch of different places. And when I finally did get an interview at a big management company, they gave the position to someone who had held a higher position and had been laid off. And so at that point, we were living on food stamps. I felt like I had done everything that I was supposed to do.
And we're still waiting tables.
To get myself a job, and was still waiting tables. And then there was a series of unfortunate events where the house we were living in got broken into and a bunch of our stuff got stolen.
Like a bad TV drama, but it's
my car
true.
got broken into. And at that point, I was just like, get me out of here. And so
what's funny is that I actually had kept a lot of stuff in Beijing, because I was like, I'm totally going back, but then I kind of stuck around with Rachel, and we were doing the Tennessee thing and had all this stuff in Beijing. Finally, when she was like, get me out of here, I said, I think I know a place. It's a little far away. And the language is hard, and you got to learn how to eat with chopsticks, but let's go to Beijing. I already had a connection. So when we got there together, again, it was just kind of we knew we wanted to travel. We knew we wanted to experience, more than our little corner of Tennessee there. And it's hard when you're destitute. So, teaching English in China was the doorway that let us, experience a lot of the city of Beijing, a lot of China, and then travel to Japan, Korea, Thailand, Indonesia, Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia, Philippines. I mean, all over Asia. There's no way we would have ever done a fraction of that without the teaching thing. So.
Yeah, that's so cool to hear. I'm curious, like, do you guys teach English so that you can travel, or have you really like grown to love teaching English?
Well, at first it started as a means to an end. Like I never ever saw myself doing anything education related ever. Like if you had told me,
that you would be any kind of teacher,
or any kind of teacher, let alone in China, like when I was still in university, I would have told you were nuts. Like there is no way I ever saw myself doing that. But when Sasha was like, it's so easy to get a job doing that in Beijing, you can have a job tomorrow, I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. And then, yeah, it turned out I actually did come to really enjoy teaching English.
I guess I'm similar. Yeah, the first year was like, oh, I'll give this a shot. And like I said, I always thought, if I hate it, I'll go home. If not, whatever, it's a cool thing to do for a year and then we'll move on, right? And I actually ended up really liking it. I mean, a lot of people who were around me at that time, this was 8 years ago, right? So a lot of them are not teaching anymore. I can just think of the guys I lived with the first year in Beijing. One's a nurse now. One works in the American consulate in Guangzhou. So he's still in China, but he's a diplomat now. Another one has lived in where? He's lived in India, Sierra Leone, Indonesia. He's just nuts. He like goes all over the world. And that's another awesome thing about taking on something like teaching English in China is the people you're going to meet are from a very wide variety of backgrounds and cultures, and then all go on to these very different things. And I just ended up liking it a lot and went back for another go round in Beijing, got better jobs, certainly in my second and third years. And then we lived in Kunming for a year. I was doing enough freelance work to not teach. And I was like, oh, awesome. I don't have to teach English anymore. I'm just going to be my own boss and like blog all the time and stuff. And I did that and found it was kind of lonely, like sitting at home all the time on my computer. I was making enough money. I was busy enough, but I told Rachel, I was like, I want to teach again. I think I miss it. And I didn't have to, but I found a gig in Kunming, even part-time teaching, because I think I was missing it for sure. Like you come to get used to it. You come to value the relationships with your colleagues and your students. And I mean, it's kind of cool. People always think it's fun to be like a digital nomad and work at your computer, but yeah, you're just sitting at your computer all day. It's very, lonely and boring at times. So teaching is never a dull moment. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. You're not wrong about that. Today I was like, Ryan, have you left the house? And he's like, no, we should go for a walk.
I did leave the house.
That happens to us all the time.
We have a lot of days like that. Like it can get pretty lonely behind the screen, and before you know it, you've spent the entire day inside behind.
My eyes hurt. I need to open the window and like it's so bright out there.
Yeah, there's a really good, I think it's a New Yorker article. I don't know if anyone's seen it. It's like a parody of working from home and like an emergency call someone would make.
I'm going to check that out.
It's really funny.
I'm going to look that up for sure.
But yeah, I guess we answered the question. We both do really enjoy it at this point. I mean, we're on our 7th and 8th years of teaching and in a different capacity now than we were when we were living in Beijing, but still like it enough to keep going. And I mean, it can be a lot of fun.
Initially, no, I never saw myself as a teacher, but it's worked out quite well.
Yeah. I think that's one of the really cool things about teaching English, though, is that I feel like not a lot of people, when they're like kids, like people will be like, oh, I want to be a teacher, but not a lot of people are like, I want to go like teach kids in China English. But so many travelers or like young people end up doing that because it's such a good gateway into exploring the world.
Yeah, for sure.
It is. And once that gate's open, it's hard to close, I guess. That's a big thing for us.
Once you've been bitten by the travel bug, it's really hard to shake it off.
Yeah.
So what were some of the things you were able to do when you were based out of Beijing, travel-wise?
Travels? Is that what you asked about?
Yeah, travel-wise, what were some of the things you were able to do while you were based out of Beijing?
The first thing would be, let's start from like the easiest things. So there's a lot of short holidays in China. You have the Tomb Sweeping Day, the Dragon Boat Festival, the Mid-Autumn Festival. You got a lot of 3 or 4 day weekends. So on those, we would hop a train and go to places like Datong, where there's a giant Buddhist grotto where they've carved Buddhas into this cave, like these epic, huge Buddhas carved out of the cave. And you could do that in the temples and try the local food in 2 days and be back in Beijing. If we had a longer trip, like if we had a week, I think we did 2 trips to South Korea. We did 1 to Japan, and then when we had like really long trips, like when I was working at a university, we had the whole summer off, and we had like a month for Chinese New Year. So sorry about the dogs. Mexicans have a lot of dogs, and they're always outside, and they're always barking.
Mexico is just a noisy.
It's a noisy place. But on a long trip, like when we got a whole month, one time we did a Thailand and Laos trip, like both countries in a month. So it kind of ran the gamut, from short trips in China to these very long backpacking adventures in Southeast Asia.
We would take a trip any chance we got.
Any chance,
and
yeah.
If it was more like a long weekend, we would stay somewhere in China, somewhere that we could take an overnight train to. But if it was any longer than that, we would shoot for an international trip.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I'm sure when you were based in China, you were there for 5 or 6 years. I'm sure you saw a lot of people come in, a lot of new teachers and stuff. What were some of the things that were different between people who would come in and then you'd see them, quit their job and go home 2 months later versus the people who kind of stuck it out and seemed to really enjoy it?
I found that most of the time, the people who stuck it out and really enjoyed it were people who came there by choice. And then the people who were sent there by a job didn't tend to enjoy it so much. That was one of the biggest differences that I think I noticed.
Yeah, I mean, I guess by the time I went back for my second go round and Rachel's first, the jobs that we ended up in tended to be people who knew they were going to at least do a year. And I could think of when we worked at this one company that's very big. It's called Wall Street English. They're all over the world, but they're very big in China. And it's a really good gig. You have to be pretty qualified and, have experience for that one. So I feel like most people we ended up working with there, you wouldn't really find people who dropped out before their contract ended. I mean, some people were like us and they were using it as kind of a means to an end to travel and to get this experience, maybe learning Chinese on the side or doing something else. And then some were just like, okay, this is my career for sure. Like I'm working full time. I'm trying to climb the ladder. I'm trying to get to a management position. So that was the main difference. Actually, we maybe were the slackers there because we wanted to like swap days with people so we could go to Japan for 5 days. We weren't trying to do the management training program, which in a company like that, that's a big reason people come on there because you can get to a management position and, keep moving up the ladder and actually end up with a really solid, well-paying job if you tough it out and you're willing to do that. We were more in it for the adventure, so we never went that route. But in the first year I was there, for sure, there were a lot of drifters. You could tell people who were they weren't into teaching really. It was just, I want to make some money. I want to make some money or I want to get a visa. And, after a while, if that's all you want out of it, you're going to get sick of it and you're probably going to burn out or quit. So.
Yeah, definitely. We were in, let's go ahead with that question.
I see it down there too. I already have my answer. He asked, would you say the pay was better as a personal tutor? And so I'll try to make it quick, but basically you can get a high hourly rate as a personal tutor, but then you deal with students.
It's much more unstable.
Right, they flake out all the time. They'll cancel at the last minute and, private students aren't going to be able to get you a visa or get you in the, insurance program in China or wherever it is you are. So yes, you may get a higher hourly rate, but in the end, it's always better to have at least a part-time job that's stable, that gets you a salary, that gets you a visa, because then that's a guarantee.
Personal
I always use that.
was always more like a side gig for us,
right?
Like in addition to our part-time jobs, because
that was like fun money. Like, I got the student once a week.
Right,
and
it was beer money. It was your weekend money.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you could always plan for that income, but it was always very likely that you couldn't count on that income because, like Sasha would say, there's no incentive for them to not cancel.
Yeah, it's like when we worked at Wall Street English, those people paid for their course, and if they don't show up for the class, tough luck. You paid for the class and you didn't show up. It's your problem. Teachers still get paid, the lights stay on, but with a one-on-one basis, if they tell you, hey, I can't meet tomorrow, then what are you going to do? You say, okay, call me next week. I mean, it's just a good supplemental thing, I think, really. And I would tell people never to rely on that entirely.
But yes, the hourly wage is higher.
I put the laptop down when you guys were doing
more.
the introduction a little bit, so I apologize for that. But did you guys have to start I think you said you printed out a resume and just kind of throw it at schools and see what stuck. Is that how you got primarily into it?
I had a buddy who was in Beijing who just kind of grandfathered me into the program that he was in. As it turned out, the program really sucked. Not his fault, but I got out of it after about a month. And then it's going to be dependent on what country you're looking at and what city specifically. So in Beijing, there's a website called thebeijinger.com, and there's a ton of ads on there. I just hit that right away and was sending my resume, went to a ton of interviews, and within a few days, I had a new position.
So during the interview process, did they kind of vet you, and did you have to have past experience, or it didn't really matter as long as you spoke English, I guess?
Well, at that point, I didn't really have any experience. I'd been there for a few weeks, and so the job I ended up getting is just they liked me. I mean, I was there, I was on the ground, I came in person in the interview. I had my degree, I had my resume. I hadn't finished my TOEFL yet at the time, but they were willing to give me a shot.
At least in China, anyways, the demand for English teachers is
so high. Yeah.
It's really easy to get a job. Like, it might not be the best job, but at least as far as like getting your foot in the door and making connections and stuff, that's really easy to do. Like, in the first year that I was in Beijing, I was just working on a tourist visa because I wasn't sure if I was gonna like it or even like Beijing for that matter. So I just like did a lot of different like short-term, part-time things. And those all eventually led to better, higher paying positions that were more, I don't really want to use the word exclusive, but like not really advertised for, you know what I mean? It was just kind of like someone putting in a good word for you.
It's pretty easy to get a foot in the door without a lot of experience. It certainly helps when you're a native speaker, when you have a degree of any kind, when you have a TEFL certificate of any kind. These things help. And then, as you move up the range of jobs, the higher you get, the more experience they expect. Or, there's plenty of jobs we never even bothered applying for because they required a master's degree.
Right.
So you just have to, especially in China and Korea, Taiwan, if you don't think it's part of China, China does. Vietnam, I think in all these countries, you can walk in, and if you're willing to be there and you have, your passport, your resume, a degree, you're going to be good finding a job. It's just a matter of better jobs that require more experience.
So Allie and Brian look like they both the same. Yeah, the TOEFL.
Talk about the TOEFL.
Oh.
Yeah.
There's actually a really wide range of options for getting a TOEFL. You can do one online, and there are a number of companies offering online TOEFLs, or you can go a different route and do more of like a more intensive, very standardized course, which is called a CELTA, and it's done by Cambridge, and it's
like the holy grail of English teaching.
Well, it's just the highest level English teaching certification you can get. But it's usually done in person, and it's very intensive, a lot of like classroom time.
Expensive too.
It's very expensive. They're usually around $2,000 US.
You only go for that if you're like, yes, I want to teach probably as a career.
Yeah, if you want English teaching as a career, you definitely want to go that route because it's recognized everywhere. It's probably the most recognized teaching certification you can get. Neither one of us have one of those. In some countries, you will get higher pay for having higher qualifications, but not in China. Like,
what did we get? We got a 60-hour online TOEFL.
60-hour online course through Bridge TOEFL. But these days, they're actually...
Oops, sorry.
These days, they're actually one of the more expensive companies to get an online TOEFL through.
What's the other one? My TOEFL?
My TOEFL is a new, it's new-ish. We just found out about it recently, but we've seen them a lot all over the place, and we actually have a partnership with them where if you did want to take one of their course, we have a code that will get you 35% off.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's a big discount.
Yeah.
So it's either Gypsy or Gypsy.
Well, we could find it and maybe get it to you guys.
Yeah, we
it's
can.
Either Gypsy or Gypsies. 35, and that'll get you 35% off any one of their courses.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. Gypsy in the singular, just with a Y at the end. bad English teachers.
It's one of those. I know it has IE in it. I just can't remember if it's IE or IES. It's one of those. I
Yeah,
promise.
we can send it out by email
Okay.
too afterwards.
Okay, cool.
But like as far as getting a TEFL, I always tell people it's not a bad idea. I mean, when I went to Beijing originally, the program I was in was like, yeah, here's the link. We've signed you up for a TEFL course. You should finish it. Of course, we were all, recently minted college grads. Like none of us cared about doing any work. We were just trying to party. So none of us did it. And then we realized the program was, kind of crap. We were all going to quit. So we just forgot about it. And then of course, a year later, I'm like, oh, I should finish that TEFL. And I messaged them and they said, yeah, your thing is expired, dude. So you have to pay again if you want to do it. Eventually, when we applied with Wall Street English, they were basically like, you need a TEFL to get this job.
Well, no, in China, you need a TEFL to get a working visa. They don't, Wall Street English doesn't necessarily care if you have a TEFL because they train you to do it with their method. But to get a working visa in China, you do need to have an English teaching certification.
I'll be right back. I need to open a door. You guys keep talking without me.
Is it hot in there?
It is hot in here, yes.
So in China, it seems like a visa thing. Is it pretty similar around Asia where to get a visa, you're likely to need an English teaching certification?
I would say most likely. And I know that in South Korea, I'm not 100% sure if you need one, but you do need an FBI background check. Or at least like from the States. You need like a really intensive background check from the relative agency in your country. Sasha's brother actually just started teaching in Seoul, and it was a pretty rigorous process for him to do the background check. And for China, you can just show up and hang out for a little while on a tourist visa and then find a job that way. And it's pretty easy to switch your visa once you're there. But Seoul, on the other hand, it's not quite as easy. It's much better to get their working visa in your home country. So in that case, you would want to have a job lined up before you go there. I'm not 100% sure about Thailand if you would need an English teaching certification, but I would say in most cases it's better to be safe than sorry, because you could always do, like a 40 or 60-hour course like we did, just so that you have the certification, and then you could always do more from there if it was necessary. But I would say, yeah, for the most part around Asia, you definitely need an English teaching certification.
Does that answer your question, Allie and Brian?
Yeah.
I did recently hear that having the TEFL certification is not enough anymore in Thailand, that you actually need a degree in teaching, like a bachelor's. A man was telling me his son had to leave Thailand. He'd been teaching here for years and go and teach in Vietnam because of that issue. But that's just one guy who was like a little drunk and like 80 years old telling me this. His son just wanted to go to Vietnam. I don't know. But
was it a Bachelor of Education, or was it just a bachelor's degree in general?
In education.
Oh, wow.
I could probably figure that out within a few minutes by poking around the ESL circles I'm in, but I would say that we're not really like well versed in the policies and the whole environment of teaching in Thailand. We've been there a bunch, but never worked there. So the one thing I would say is I wouldn't be surprised, because the military government in Thailand has been pretty uncool so far.
Ever since the most recent military coup, they've created a lot of new rules. So
they're trying to ban street food in Bangkok, which is absurd and outrage.
I wouldn't be surprised to hear that that is the case.
They're also going to require travelers to prove that they have travel insurance in order to get allowed in the country.
Oh.
So I wouldn't really be surprised if this was a new thing in Thailand, that they're trying to kick out all the riffraff. And to them, that means if you're not an actual teacher, then you can't teach English, which is absurd. And they're going to realize that all their, a lot of their schools are going to have to go without English teachers then.
Yeah.
I could look into that. I'm not sure. Like China's come in waves too. There's been times where they've made it so hard to get a visa, and then they realize, oh no, like schools can't get teachers. Schools want teachers.
Way more people are working illegally, which makes our jobs harder. So we should probably make it easier for people to get a visa.
It comes in waves, and so
in the 3.5 years alone that we were teaching in Beijing, there was a period of time where you absolutely had to be in your home country to get the working visa. And I went through that process in America. And then another time where I could just hop across the border to Hong Kong and get it there. So it really just depends.
I would definitely advise that, yeah, like if you're really serious about any country in particular, that you try to be as up to date as you can on what's going on there. So like if nobody knows about it, Dave's ESL Cafe is probably the best resource for jobs, and it's a huge forum and message board. So that's the place where you could probably post that question and get an answer within minutes.
Yeah.
From people who are actually teaching in Thailand. And then, yeah, any place that you want to look at it very seriously, you want to try and be as up to date as you can on the requirements. Probably just go ahead and contact some schools, even if you might not take the job, just to get a for sure from people who are hiring. What are your requirements now? What does it take to get the job? What does it take to get a visa? This sort of thing. So that's a good question, and can't really specifically answer it, but it's something to take into consideration.
You kind of mentioned this before, but
a week you guys have to work?
Oh, sorry. No, you go, Allie.
Oh, I was just asking, how many hours a week do you have to work typically?
It really depends on the job.
Yeah.
The company that Sasha keeps talking about, Wall Street English, that we taught for in China, they offer 2 different contract options. One is 25 hours a week, and the other is 35 hours a week. But the 35
for 5 hours of prep.
Right. It actually becomes more like 40 hours a week. But I feel like a lot of it depends on where you are, because there were a lot of, full 40-hour a week contracts that we came across in Beijing. But in Kunming, that was kind of like unheard of. Like 20 hours a week was definitely like the max that most teachers would teach in Kunming.
Yeah, I feel like teaching hours wise, I mean, if it's a super part-time job, it might just be a few hours a week. But if it's more of a stable, serious job, you're talking probably 20 hours a week is pretty standard for what's considered like full-time teaching, because you're going to have office hours or prep hours as well. But yeah, and then like, I don't know, it depends on countries for sure. My brother's in Seoul now, and he's like, they're grinding him. I mean, he's working a lot. He's working a lot more than he worked in Beijing.
It's not all teaching hours, but
right. He just has to be there. He has to be in the center a lot. It's kind of a lot of, I don't know, busy work, I guess. But
is it hourly or salary?
That job is salary. So yeah, they milk them. They're like, you have to be here for this long. And Wall Street English was salary too, but we, as part-time teachers, we only had to be there. We taught 20 hours a week, and we had an hour of prep for each day of work. So we had 25 hours that we were on the clock, and it wasn't bad.
You guys are hourly then, I take it?
Well, right now we're working part-time, and it's all hourly.
Right now we're teaching online.
It's actually half hourly.
A company called VIP Kid. So our students are Chinese kids. They're in China, but it's all online. The company is based in Beijing. And you can set your own schedule. They used to have a minimum amount of classes that you had to open up, but now that they've got,
10,000 teachers.
Yeah, 10,000 teachers. They can't exactly have that requirement. Now it's more of just like a suggestion. So there's actually no minimum or maximum.
There's teachers who probably work 5-6 hours a week, and there's some who are somehow doing 40. I don't know. They're insane.
Are some teachers who definitely turn it into a full-time 40-hour-a-week job, which if you're in Europe, that's definitely the most desirable time zone. It would be easy to do 40 hours a week there, but for teachers in America, they're pulling all-nighters in order to teach that many hours, because
they're straight up vampires.
Classes are only 25 minutes a piece. So to teach 40 hours in a week, that's 80 classes.
Wow.
Lord of mercy, I couldn't do it. We teach like 30 classes, 35 in a busy week for us. We might be doing closer to 50 in July because the kids are off for summer, so they can take classes throughout the day, which means we have extra hours during the week.
Yeah.
And we're going to take advantage of it because we're trying to do a lot of travels in the fall. So we figured hunker down and save money in July, spend it in the fall. We're always up for this kind of thing.
For these kids, it's just an after-school thing, the online English lessons. So in the summertime, when they're out of school, there's more hours available for students to take class and for teachers to teach class. And so it's almost like double time in July and August.
But what I should say about VIP Kid and why we're doing that, if anyone's curious, I mean, like we had a really good setup in China and we really enjoyed it. But after several years, we were just kind of over it, wanted something different.
The world is bigger than China.
Yeah, so we were in Bali for most of a year because I was in a program studying, and Rachel was offered a job with English First to teach there online with them, but the pay was laughably bad. So she said no thank you and was just a island housewife for a few months. And then she got word of VIP Kid towards the end of our time there and picked up the job at the end of our time in Bali, and we've kept it because we're in Mexico now. There's teaching jobs here, but they're mostly in the big cities where she doesn't really want to live. And then we're headed to South America, and we know there's teaching jobs in Colombia, in Peru, in Chile, in Argentina, in Brazil. But as far as we know, it pays substantially less than East Asia. And so rather than go in there and just say like, oh, we're going to move to Rio and take a job for a year and hope we like it, we're going to try to travel to these places and use VIP Kid as our source of income, because it is enough. Since you can control your hours, you can add some if you need them, you can take them out if you don't. And if we find a place there where there's good jobs that seem like we'd like, we might set up and hopefully have some more resources about the market in South America, but we're complete noobs to that right now. So.
Allie, is your question related to part-time pay, like on the ground in China, or from the online teaching?
From on the ground.
Yes, it is actually enough to live off of. It's enough to live off of and save a little bit. So
helps when you split costs. I mean, we're a couple, so we were splitting the costs, and we also had a roommate. So, anytime you have someone else you're splitting the daily bills with, that helps.
A lot of it depends on your living situation. So it's definitely enough to live off of if you have roommates. But we were always wanting to save more for travel. So we would make our main job like the part-time schedule and then supplement it with even more like super part-time stuff.
Yeah, like 2 or 3 other gigs,
So when we were saving money for our big gap year, because our one paycheck from our like main contract jobs was enough to live off of, that's what we would do. We would live on one of our contracts and then just put the other, paychecks, not contracts, live on one paycheck and then just put the other in the bank and just pretend like it didn't exist. And that helped us save a lot of money really fast for our gap year.
Was it pretty easy to find side gigs and extra teaching opportunities once you were there and teaching?
Yes,
yeah,
it was incredibly
easy.
From like personal tutoring to just like preschools or kindergartens that just wanted a foreign teacher for like an hour or two in the morning.
Once a week, twice a week.
Right, a couple days a week.
Voice recording, we got paid to record like tapes or CDs, I don't know, and it always had like really, really poor grammar. And we'd be like, should we change this? And they're like, no, you just read it the way it is. Like,
so
you're
like,
teaching the wrong thing.
Teaching the wrong thing, but okay.
Yesterday, I with my mom go shopping. Okay, I'm gonna read this.
The pay over
whatever,
here,
read it. Here's
in the
money.
States, it's the pay over here in the States. It's a little bit different. Like you get interviewed, and they try to see how low they can hire you for. Is it kind of the same process over there, where you're like, damn, I wish I would have known this much because I would have come back with a counter offer to say, listen, I want you guys to pay me this much? Or is it pretty much set in stone that's kind of what you're going to get paid?
I mean, my first job in Beijing seemed like a good deal, and it really wasn't. We were all kind of getting screwed over. So we were just, had never been there, had no idea. We were all fresh out of college, like, just totally naive noobs. So as soon as we were there and we're like, oh, the Beijinger.com, Craigslist, like all these websites where you can see, people are putting their pay rates in the ad because otherwise they're not going to get responses. So then it was very clear to us, like, wow, we're getting paid shit right now. Look at all these other ads, what people are getting paid. So I don't think like once you're actually getting into an interview position and stuff that they'll try to lowball you too much.
Yeah, I think the super lowballing is not quite as common as it is in the States.
No. A company like Wall Street, for example, we always go back to them because that was our best job and our longest job we had. Like the pay is the pay. You'll get a raise if you stick around for another year, but they're not giving one person any more than the other.
Well,
right?
Another reason they're not really lowballing you is is a unique cultural thing to China. Like gaining face and losing face is a very important and very big deal in China. And for a lot of people, studying English is kind of like a status symbol.
Mm-hmm.
And so actually, the more you pay for your English lessons, sort of like the better you look, like the more face you gain. So the lowballing is much less common for that reason alone.
And I don't, like I said, it's hard for us to speak to like Korea, Thailand, Vietnam. We just know from like my brother, my friend, a backpacker we met. But, you know, I've always looked at Dave's ESL Cafe. I look at Craigslist. Before we found VIP Kid, you know, I was thinking we're going to move somewhere and take a year-long contract and teach again. So I was looking for jobs in Chile, in Colombia, in Thailand. And, you know, you'll see the pay on a lot of them. And I feel like if they don't show the pay, it's a red flag kind of.
Yeah.
You have to get on, you know, Google and figure out, you know, how many Colombian pesos equals how many Canadian or US dollars. But I think a lot of the legit jobs will advertise the pay. And then if you're sticking around for a year or more, or if you're good, if you get high marks from students, high reviews, whatever, you'll get an increased pay. I don't think you have to worry about that too much, but definitely watch out for people that don't tell you how much they pay, because then they might try to do that, right? They might try to see, will you take this? And then you might have to kind of say, well, I saw another ad where it was this much for the same hours. So I think I'll apply with them. I mean, you have to kind of play hardball sometimes, but.
Yeah, I have a question kind of related to that, because I feel like we've heard a couple different stories of people like, you know, they show up for these English teaching jobs and the school doesn't exist, or they show up and it's like complete shit. Do you guys have any advice on how to, outside of seeing the pay, like different things to look for?
Yeah. Well, let me think. So first of all, like without actually being there on the ground, you're limited, right? If you're not willing to just like buy that ticket to China and go and live there for a month while you personally interview in places, then yeah, you're limited. And this is where you can get taken advantage of. They know that you're not there. You're viewing it through your email and Skype. And how are you really going to confirm this? So red flags, I think, are that they don't tell you the pay. If you can find no reviews whatsoever, that's probably a red flag. I mean, what's the website? Glassdoor, I think?
Yeah, Glassdoor.
We work for VIP Kid now, and there's a good review or stream of reviews on there of other teachers. And some have said they didn't like it. But for the most part, you'll see that people say it's legit, and I like it, and I get paid well.
You can review pretty much like any company.
Right. So this wasn't around in my beginning days, but now you type in a company or a school name, and if you see some bad reviews, obviously that's a red flag. If you see nothing, though, that's kind of a red flag too, because why aren't people sharing their experience? There should be some kind of review. If you look Wall Street English, if you look English First, if you look, I forget what the national program in Korea is called, but they have a program, Epic, for the whole country. If you look VIP Kid, you know, just Googling them these days, you're going to see a bunch of reviews, and some might be negative, but if you're getting mostly positive reviews, you can probably feel comfortable and safe in sending them your application.
I always advise seeking out websites for foreigners for different cities. We mentioned the Beijinger for Beijing. The one for Kunming is called Go Kunming. You'll always find reviews of different companies and agencies on there. Like if I ever had a bad experience with an agency or something like that, I would make sure to like go on one of those websites and, you know, create a post about it.
Dave's ESL Cafe, for sure. People are active on there.
So definitely always look for any review of the agency or school that you're thinking of applying with.
And we should mention that happens with the TEFL courses a lot too. People think they're getting this course where, you know, accommodation's included and a job's going to come at the end of it, and then they end up just being out $400 and they didn't get anything.
Or if it's online, it's like not accredited, or their like certification expires.
There's a lot of room for scams in the ESL world because of the distance and I mean, come on, like most people who choose to do this and are applying online from thousands of miles away don't have much experience, and that's why they're doing it from Canada trying to move to China or wherever. So you just have to be smart and vet people and search them, check review boards, check Dave's ESL Cafe.
Right. Seek out a place where you can ask people, you know, Facebook groups, other websites.
Websites. Are there any Facebook groups that you guys would highly recommend people joining?
Not for China, because they don't allow Facebook in China. I actually didn't even know Facebook groups were such a big thing until after we left China. And we were looking for a place to live in Bali, and we were like, how do we find a place to live? And everyone's like, just join Facebook groups. And I'm like, what are you talking about, Facebook groups? It's just like this whole big thing that kind of emerged during our time in China that we missed out on because of, the Great Firewall.
I'm sure they're around. I mean,
there's probably some now.
Punch and ES. I know there's a good one for Hanoi specifically. I joined that to share my VIP Kid referral link, because Hanoi is a pretty bustling English teaching capital now, and you don't have to be a native speaker there. My friends from Serbia went there after Bali and got jobs teaching English. So.
Oh,
nice.
Cool. Yeah. Looking for that Serbian English accent.
Yes,
there's a class
English with very authentic accent.
Can you talk a bit about, I know you guys haven't taught everywhere, but just the pros and cons of some of the most popular spots like Vietnam, Korea, China?
Well, certainly the best places for saving money are going to be China and South Korea and Taiwan. And then other places that pay enough to get by and save a little bit are Vietnam and Thailand.
And I mean, from what we gather so far, Brazil and Argentina and Chile, you can probably in all those places you can get by. I don't know about saving a lot of money. Like I said,
it's more for the experience.
It seems like it's more for the experience, and that's why we're going to hopefully go to all these countries with our VIP Kid jobs. And if we really, really like it, maybe go to some interviews. But at this point, we're afraid of the commitment of a contract and all that. I mean, we have a contract with VIP Kid, but we just move our computers and we're good. So, and then I think in Japan, the market is kind of like not as big as it used to be. So
yeah, pretty saturated. So there's a lot of competition now.
People get by, but don't save much in Japan.
Right, exactly.
You don't go there to save any money. You go there to live in Japan, which is,
most
you guys have been. It's awesome.
Yeah, Japan's
come
great.
out of Japan with what they went there with.
Right.
Had a blast, but don't really have a whole lot to show for it. But they were able to afford the cost of living there.
But people who want to save money, pay off loans, this sort of thing, China, Korea, and again, Taiwan, if you don't consider it part of China. Will be mentioned as a third country.
We don't.
Okay. So
I'm putting it separate in my country count.
It's a sensitive subject in China. So actually, I think you can make pretty decent money in Vietnam. Again, it's all about what you want to do. Do you want to say, I just want to work 10, 15 hours a week to get by, to study a language, to travel, to run a blog? Or do you want to say, I'm trying to pay off my student loans in 3 years? Then you do what my roommate did, and you just kill yourself and work all day, every day until you can do that. I mean, you can do either. So
yeah, cool.
But we could say something more about Korea. We haven't taught there, but my brother's there now. We have several friends who have taught there. Pros, you definitely get paid very well. It's a nice place to live. Best internet in the world. Small country, you can get all around. Great food. Cons, they work you to the bone there. You really work a lot in Korea. And I guess you're trading one for the other, right? You're in that full-time career mode, but you're getting paid quite well. China, you get paid well is a big pro, and you can work part-time and get by and even save money. And then the cons, I guess, are, Chinese cities can be gross and crowded and polluted.
Mega cities.
Chinese is really hard to learn.
Yeah, Chinese is really hard to learn. Their sort of manners are a bit different.
Or lacking.
What we're accustomed to. I'm trying to be nice.
It's okay.
Don't be nice. I want to hear some of these. What was a culture shock for you? What was different in manners? I know, I've heard people just cutting in line.
There is no
so
line.
Rude.
They just push you out of line.
There's just lots of elbows flying around.
Spitting.
No concept of
yelling, smoking.
Yeah, spitting, yelling, smoking,
burping,
chewing with your mouth open, smoking everywhere.
It's kind of fun though in a Chinese restaurant. You can just yell at your waiter and slurp your noodles and get belligerently drunk, and nobody cares.
It was really fun for 2 years because I'm from the southern states of America where we learn Southern hospitality, and it's a really big deal. You always wave to the stranger and hold doors open for people, and that is just non-existent At least in the north part of China anyways. I found that in the south,
They have some
people
southern hospitality.
are
too.
much more friendly. They're like way more laid back. It's a much slower pace of life. I think a lot of it though is just Beijing is really competitive.
Shanghai too, Guangzhou. I mean, these big
So
cities.
it puts people in sort of they're very on edge.
We do, shameless plug, there's a whole part of Grateful Gypsies of our website about culture shock in China. So we got a section on eating, drinking, toilets, apartment hunting, the whole face thing. I think there's a part about that. So if anybody wants to dive into that, there's a section on our website through the live in China category. We figured for people who consider a move there, it's a pretty relevant topic. So. And it's funny. I mean, we have a lot of funny stories in there, especially
We do have so many
toilet stories.
Yes.
A lot of funny toilet stories.
Because, the common toilet in China is the squat toilet.
Usually without doors.
It's actually like a porcelain toilet. It's just in the ground.
Without doors.
Right. And the public ones are without doors and sometimes even without walls. That was always something to get used to.
You get way too close to strangers.
Yeah, you're probably holding on to the wrong knee when you squat down.
Yeah, it's some.
So I think that's a biggest piece of culture shock for a lot of people.
And that throws a lot of people off. That's why they have to pay you more to live in China, because Westerners get scared of the funny.
It's all about Ryan.
Funny
the
things
first time he had to use the squat toilet.
This is a funny story. We went to a nightclub. My friend he swore he was going to avoid squat toilets. He was like, no, I'm not going to do it. I trained my body so I don't have to squat. I'm going to avoid it. I'm not going to use it at the school. I'm not going to use it when we go out, whatever. We went out for a nice dinner one night. It's hot pot, I think, which can mess with your stomach. I went to this nightclub and he was dressed really nice, he's like, I have to use this. I have to use the squat toilet. And he went in there and says he closed the door and just looked at it, like really confused, and looked at his nice shoes and his nice slacks and his nice button-down shirt. He thought, this is going to be a disaster. So he completely de-panted. He just took the pants entirely off and hung them up. And took the button-down shirt off and hung it up. And was just in his
totally got naked.
Just in his shoes, in a Chinese nightclub, learning how to use a squat toilet. So,
it was at a nightclub.
It was at a nightclub, and even it was a nice one, and it had walls and doors, but was
he
still
never had
squatting.
to squat before. He's like, I'm just gonna take my pants off.
By the way, he's one of the friends who only lasted 6 months. He's
I'm ashamed to say it. I did the same thing in Morocco.
Whatever works.
Whatever works. He was worried. Yeah, if you're, play it safe. Err on the side of caution.
Yeah, better to be safe than sorry for sure, especially in that situation.
We got totally off topic with the toilet things there. I don't know if we can speak much more to pros and cons. Thailand, you're in Thailand. That's a pro.
Yeah.
But I don't think you get paid as much there, and you might get stuck in some tiny rural town where your idea of Thailand might not be that, you're going to be there and be like, well, this isn't that nice, you're not on the beach and you're not in the big city. I know that happens to a lot of people. You take a job in Thailand, you end up in a random town somewhere and you're the only farang and nobody speaks English and the food makes you cry. It's so spicy and there's nothing really to do. And then you're like, well, I'm in Thailand, but this isn't that cool.
Yeah.
But it's not Thailand.
Right. Like to get a good job in Bangkok or Chiang Mai, you have a lot of competition. So once you're an experienced teacher, once you have a CELTA, if you actually have a master's or an education degree, I'm sure it's pretty easy to find jobs in those cities. I should say I'm considering applying for this master's program that's in Bangkok. It's through an American school, and they do a master's program in international education for American educators who are already living abroad, so we don't have to go back to the States for 2 years and fork out the huge cost of the tuition. And so I'm looking into this, hoping to apply soon. And I would think after doing something like that, I would hope if I wanted to stay in Bangkok, it would be easy to find a job. So it's kind of we're not good at long-term goals, but that's like a sort of long-term goal for us right now.
Yeah, that's cool.
How was it teaching in Bali?
Neither of us did any teaching in Bali. Sasha was just a student.
Sorry. I thought Sasha taught in Bali.
No,
I was a student.
You hung out. Oh, I see. Okay.
I looked into teaching for English first there because they actually have
They have 2 centers
they
in
have
Bali.
2 centers, and you can also just do the online teaching. And it's pretty much just kind of like set up for people who get there and love it and really want to stay, and they're just looking for anything.
Yeah. So they don't pay you anything.
Right.
Laughable wage.
But it is an option. And then
But you should just do VIP Kid or some other online Chinese company because you'll make more, work less.
Yeah, I found VIP Kid towards the end of our time there, and I was really wishing I had found it sooner because the VIP Kid salary is definitely enough to live on in Bali.
For sure. And I think there are, there's a decent amount of English teachers in Bali, not a lot, and most of them definitely have an education degree or a master's.
They're teaching at international schools.
There's not like a big market of training centers, and they don't pay English teachers to be in the local schools. You're only in international schools or English first there. There's a lot of jobs in Indonesia, but not in Bali.
Yeah, there's a lot of teaching jobs on Java.
Yeah.
And in
Sumatra to an extent. Yeah.
But on the island of Bali.
If you want to eat, pray, love, you gotta find another gig or teach online.
I love Bali. I've been.
Oh,
it's
amazing!
It's great.
We've been there 3 times, and the 3rd time we lived there.
It's the best.
Yeah.
Well, look into online teaching, and if you're teaching for a Chinese company in Bali, the time difference is pretty much non-existent.
When they send out an email with some of these links and stuff, we can send links for other online teaching companies. There's a bunch.
Mm-hmm.
So there's actually quite a lot of options for online teaching. VIP Kid is definitely one of many.
What are a few of the other online options?
There's one called iTalk.
There's something with a 51 in it, I think. Or
Talk 51.
Talk 51, is that it? iTalk.
Live Lingua.
Live Lingua. That's about all we know for sure, but there's others. And there's gigs teaching Russians. We had a friend who did that. I know that's more like adults. It's not kids. That's something we thought about, like, if we really needed to make extra money, we would maybe look into that, because then you could teach the Chinese kids in the morning and teach the Russian housewives in the afternoon, or however that works out. I don't know, but I mean, like, we're set on VIP Kid right now. I mean, we can get enough hours, we can earn enough. They usually run pretty decent incentives. You can get bonuses for getting people referred. You can add extra classes at the last minute and get paid more for that if you sign up. Like, if a kid does a free trial class and they sign up after you taught them, you get a bonus for that. So it ends up being a pretty solid gig, and that's really what we've been pushing. That I don't know if anybody looks at what Grateful Gypsies posts, but in recent months we've been on your guys' podcast. We talked about that a lot. We had a post with Goats on the Road about teaching with VIP Kid, because we really, whether it's VIP Kid or another online company, it's an awesome idea right now, because there's so many of these jobs available. They pay well. You make your own schedule. You don't need to deal with visas. You can work from home or an Airbnb, whatever. And then if you're like the kind of person who's not sure about going all in, and applying for a job in China, Korea, Vietnam, Thailand, signing up for a year contract, all this sort of thing, you get your feet wet with this, you get the experience, which is on the resume, and you see if you like it at all. I mean, if you hate it, if you really hate the whole teaching thing one-on-one, to a kid on your computer, then you're not going to like it with 25 of them in a class. Then it's pretty much like abandon ship. Don't do this. And if you like it, then, hey, you've got some experience, and you can look more carefully into where you might want to actually go and get a job. So we're all about the online gigs right now. It's great.
I just posted several different online English teaching companies in the chat box. Those are just a few, but we can send more to you guys to send out in the email. There's a bunch.
Okay, cool. Shalini, did you have a question?
I was just wondering that, like, the online teaching, is that something you can do, like, without experience as a first step and without your TEFL?
Well, it depends. If you have your bachelor's degree, it's a lot easier. They would definitely take that in lieu of a TEFL. Getting a TEFL would just give you a leg up in that situation.
We know for VIP Kid, they say they require it. I can't really speak to the other companies because we haven't applied for any of them.
But I know for
it always
VIP
helps.
Kid, like as long as you have some kind of experience with kids, because those students are 5 to 12 years old. But you know, that could even be like
say you babysat.
babysitting.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily have to be like
So
in
you
a
were a
classroom
camp
setting.
counselor. It
Yeah,
doesn't
camp
matter.
counselor, definitely.
Everybody fakes everything in China anyway. So
Yeah.
if you lie in your resume, nobody's going to really notice.
Allegedly.
Right.
No, for sure. I babysat for 5 years. Like they're not going to call your neighbor. You know,
Timmy.
they're not going to do that. So
Teaching online is definitely a good way to get some experience, and it would be useful, I think, in helping to get a teaching job on the ground.
Right,
in
after the fact.
In another country after the fact. It is a great way to get your foot in the door. As far as taxes go, it's hard to get away from that long arm of
Uncle Sam. He wants your money.
We've got to pay the 15.3% self-employment tax.
There's like no way around it.
There's no way around it. We've looked into it quite a bit.
Sure. You can write off stuff. Yes, like we live in Mexico and get paid by a Chinese company and pay Uncle Sam.
We still have to pay that 15.3% self-employment tax.
Because they give the IRS our W-9s.
Yeah, they report your earnings. So.
But when we were working in China, if you're working abroad, it's the amount right now is ridiculous. It's like up to $103,000 you don't owe any taxes to the U.S. So we could go back to China and get a job there and make $102,000 and pay zero in taxes.
Right. We wouldn't have to pay taxes on
but
that.
Working for VIP Kid, right? But working for VIP Kid from home in Mexico, we have to pay 15%. So
wait, I'm sorry, I'm not following. You make $102,000 in China, and you don't have to pay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
right.
up. If you're working,
you're going to probably pay Chinese taxes.
Yeah, you're going to pay Chinese taxes, but if you're working outside of the U.S., up to I think it's even $108,000 is tax free. Yeah. You only have to pay taxes on past $108,000.
But we're self-employed with VIP Kid, and they give the IRS a form every year with how much they paid us. So there's a paper trail.
Are they an American-based company?
No, they're in China, but we still have to pay the U.S. because we have American passports. Yeah, beats me.
Oh, okay.
It's the freedom tax. That's what we call it.
Jesus Christ, this is pissing me off.
Somebody's got to pay for the wall because Mexico isn't going to do it.
Oh, shit.
15%.
We are. In Puerto Vallarta, there's a bar that has a Trump piñata and a sign that says, "Keep calm, you're on the fun side of the wall."
Yeah.
Sounds legit.
Trump piñatas being sold by the Mexican.
Oh, and the men's room has the sign "Bad Hombres." It's great.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, at least they like to joke down here. When we moved here, we were like, "What a bad time to move to Mexico!" Like, come on.
Everyone has a really good sense of humor about it.
Yeah, I mean, usually it's more jokes than anything.
Good.
But we don't need to get into that. It has nothing to do with teaching English.
Yeah. Do you guys have resources on your site about if you wanted to apply for VIP Kid and like some like tips and stuff like that?
We have a whole post about, I think it's called Our Experience Working with VIP Kid. It's on the website. It should be pretty easy to find. It's pretty recent. And then we've recently done a post with Goats on the Road. If anybody follows them, they're doing a series about making money on the road, and we kind of did a little interview with them, and they put up all the info about teaching with VIP Kid. So we have our referral links in there. If anybody's interested in applying, you can click through that. We'll be your referral. We'll see that you applied, and we can guide you through the process and kind of give you our, recommendation to the company. We also try to answer any of the FAQs. Oh yeah, there's a whole tab on our website, Teach ESL. So there's a bunch about teaching in China specifically. We have info on getting jobs, getting visas, what kind of jobs you can have, our experiences, all the jobs we worked at, kind of detailed what our hours were, what we got paid. And then, this part about working with VIP Kid. And then hopefully we'll have stuff about other countries in the future. But really, as long as we can do VIP Kid and just travel, we're gonna ride the wave because, like I said, I've looked into jobs in South America, and so far I wasn't that thrilled about what I found. Not to like say I'm going to move there and sign a year-long contract and do this. But we're leaving that door open if we decide to do that. Or if I get in this program in Thailand and that leads to a job there, certainly we're going to look into that. So,
how do they pay you? Do they pay you through direct deposit to, say, an American bank? Are there fees associated by those transactions? How does that work?
Yes and no.
And how often do you get paid?
They pay us once a month to direct deposit, and there's no fees as long as you do an ACH.
If
right?
you do the ACH transfer, then there's no fee.
So you get.
Then you guys still keeping your American account? Is that what you guys are doing?
Yeah,
okay.
we use Charles Schwab because there's no foreign ATM fees, so we can take money out here in Mexico willy-nilly, and Charles Schwab repays the fees.
Charles Schwab is the best.
And we don't pay a fee to get. Yeah, we don't pay the fee to get paid, so that works out. And then we can use the debit card at bigger grocery stores or bars or restaurants here if we want. And it's cool that we're not breaking any rules here. We're not working illegally in Mexico. We're still,
all
we're just
American
tourists.
banks have ACH. So as long as you're having them make the transfer to an American bank account, you can avoid any fees. But even before they figured that out, because before they were just doing wire transfers for everyone and paying like tons of money in fees. So they would just automatically include $12 in everyone's paycheck to cover that wire transfer fee.
Yeah.
And then they found out about ACH transfers and started using that because those don't get charged a fee. But the money is deposited no later than the 15th of every month. Sometimes it comes in as early as the 10th, but definitely always by the 15th.
And get used to once a month if you go to China. They pay you once a month too. So
that was a huge adjustment. You asked me about culture shock. Getting paid once a month was a big adjustment. But once you get your budget to a point where you're accustomed to that, it's a lot easier. But at first, that was a real struggle.
Yeah.
Do they typically all get paid on the same day? Because I could just imagine like the strip clubs being packed on a specific day. It's like
not really strip clubs per se, more like karaoke bars.
Yeah.
And I guess some pay on the 10th, some pay on the 15th. So
I think the most common day for people to get paid is the 15th. But if you work for one of like the better companies, like Wall Street English paid us on like the 2nd or 3rd of every month.
Yeah.
But
it was still once a month, but like we got paid before you did.
Yeah. But in any other job we had, it was always by the 15th, and they do that for a reason, because if you want to quit, you either
you
have
lose
to
a few weeks pay.
You lose a few weeks pay. Yeah. So that's how they
control the people.
That's their control mechanism to keep you from quitting if you're in a job you don't like.
So even if you give notice, you're at risk of losing 2 weeks of pay, I guess?
It really depends on the job, and it really depends on the relationship that you have with the company.
Right. If
this was usually an issue that we had with like really off the books, under the table, part-time stuff.
You're not on the record.
On the books, where we were having taxes taken out of our check.
Yeah, if you gave notice, you would get paid.
That was fine.
It's those shady under the table jobs. And you're like, I quit, but I want to get paid. They're like, nope, sorry.
And then you have no recourse. So.
What are you going to do,
Yeah.
What does online lesson planning look like? Like, do they give you a curriculum you're sticking to, and like, are there guidelines on how you're supposed to teach, or?
For VIP Kid, yes. They make all the lesson plans as PowerPoints. So they've designed their own platform where you've got like a box and 2 video boxes, and all the classes are one-on-one. So you can see the student, they can see you, and then you upload the PowerPoint lesson into the bigger box, and the mouse becomes a pen, and then that's your visual aid for the lesson. And
you can look at it before the lesson to prep, but you don't.
That's all you really have to do.
I just do it live.
There's no outside lesson planning for VIP Kid, which is one reason why I really like it a lot. But I know for a fact that iTalk and Live Lingua require you to do your own lesson plans. But I attended a webinar not too long ago done by a woman who teaches for iTalk, and she just created sort of a lesson blueprint. And she just sort of inserts the content into that blueprint. So she'll have a lesson on a theme, and she'll do like a reading and then a discussion about the reading, and find a relevant YouTube video, and then do a discussion about the YouTube video. So she has like a lesson plan skeleton, and then
Yeah.
she just like fills in the content.
Some jobs you might need to, and others you don't really need to do any planning. You just can look at the class to give yourself a heads up. Or make some brief notes.
The idea of trying to teach English to someone who doesn't speak English, and I don't speak their language, can you just talk about like the beginning of that? I mean, does the TEFL classes address that, I assume, but is that a little daunting to walk into a classroom of 25 children and you don't speak their language and they don't speak yours?
It's a lot of body language.
TPR, total physical response, right?
Yes, total physical response, moving your body in a way that gets your point across. But it's a little bit different when you're doing one-on-one through a computer as opposed to in a class of 25 students.
Way different.
In a class of 25 students, you're doing a lot more, you're playing a lot more games.
Singing songs, goofing around.
You can put them in groups. If you have older students, like middle school students, you can sort of give them a theme for a conversation and then split them up into groups and have them sort of practice speaking to each other in English along a theme.
And with VIP Kid, the kids who are at a really low level, they're starting with A, B, C, D, and the sounds they make, and, k, at, t, cat. And it's just like on the screen there, and there's pictures, and you go as slow as you need to. You repeat as many times as you need to, and they don't want you to speak Chinese. They don't expect you to speak Chinese, so you don't speak Chinese. That's just the way it goes. They're just getting English.
But all of that is addressed in a TEFL course.
For sure, yeah. That's a big part of it. And it's the same for any place. If we were to start teaching here in Mexico, my Spanish is terrible, so how do I teach? Well, you just go slow and try to stay at the student's level. And if it's young kids, there's games and songs and flashcards and Yoda, stuffed animals.
That's one reason why getting the CELTA certification is so expensive. But you really do get a ton out of it because they teach you how to lesson plan. They teach you all of those different skills about using TPR and body language and stuff to get your point across when you can't say it in their language. And you also do a lot of demo classes for your classmates where they pretend to be ESL students, and you're getting like in-class training, right there in real time. And you're also getting a lot of critiques to your lesson plans and things like that.
Gotcha.
What other certifications are there other than this one that's going to take like 60 hours to complete the CELTA? What were some like shortcut ones that you would recommend?
TEFL.
I think a 60-hour is a pretty short one, right?
Or TESL are the other two main ones.
Okay, yeah, you put that in another. Gotcha.
I think generally, isn't the 60-hour about the shortest one?
No, you can do 40 hours.
Oh, there's a 40-hour one. That's just what it's called. Maybe it doesn't take that long. Well, that's how long you watch the lessons for, I forget.
That's just the in-class time.
Yeah. It's hard to say which one to get. We basically just knew that we needed anything to get the jobs at Wall Street English. We were very particular. We were already in Beijing. We knew we wanted to work there. We went to the interview, and they told us, you need a certificate. Wink, wink, just like, get one. So we, went pretty simple. We went with the online 60-hour. It took us a month. It cost $250 or something. It costs a little more now, I think.
There are also other programs where it's like half and half. You do half of your TEFL classes online, and then you'll go somewhere, usually to a country where you're thinking about finding a teaching job. So you'll go you'll do the in-class stuff in China, and then that company will help you find a job. Like the one company we mentioned, My TEFL, they actually have an internship program, and they have a program where they'll help you find a job in China, South Korea, Thailand, whenever you finish your certification. And they also have the option to do that half and half, where you can do half online and then half in a classroom wherever in the world you want to go.
Awesome. I want to be aware of your guys' time here. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us, Sasha and Rachel.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Thanks for hosting this hangout.
Yeah,
if people have follow-up questions, where would be a good place to get in touch with you guys?
Grateful Gypsies everywhere. It's gratefulgypsies.com. You got like a newsletter Rachel sends out every couple of weeks. If you want to subscribe to that.
Our
or
blog is gratefulgypsies.com. We
same
would
thing
love it if you subscribe to our newsletter. It's only bi-monthly, so we'll only be invading your inbox space twice a month. And then we're
social media.
Grateful Gypsies on Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram,
YouTube,
Snapchat, YouTube.
Rachel's all over the social media, so she doesn't take her long to respond. As far as like VIP kid, we're very happy to facilitate people applying because if you get hired, we do get a bonus, and
we can also put in a good word for you. So if you did want to apply, just let us know, and when we can actually put in a good word, because the company knows that people come to them just through random links that they find online. They don't actually know the person.
Mm-hmm.
So they've started this program where if you do actually know the person you're referring, you can email them and say, hey, this is my friend.
Put in a good word.
And it kind of can bump them up a little bit.
And like I said earlier, Rachel linked to the Living in China page specifically for China. There's a ton on there. And as far as other countries go, I would go to Dave's ESL. And if anybody's interested in Korea, I can put you in touch with my brother and some other friends who have lived and worked there. We got some resources that are on the site and some that aren't. So we're happy to, chat whenever. We work at home. We're on the computer all the time. So
awesome. Well, thanks, guys. This has been awesome.
Thank you. We had a great time.
Yeah, and next week we're talking about all things digital nomad life. So
awesome.
You guys are all free. It'd be awesome to have you guys join.
We'll be
Tuesday night. I think
tuning in for that as well.
After me and Yoda finish class, we'll jump in.
Sounds good.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Cool. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks for the questions, guys. Nice talking to y'all. Sure thing.
See ya.